As usual, there's much to unpack in the Sunday Roundtable, and joining us this morning, Democratic political analyst Marianne Marsh, Republican political analyst Lizzie Guyton. Great to see you guys. So the governor was just here. What jumps out at you when you heard her speak this morning?
I think it's stunning, the fact that the governor of Massachusetts has no idea what's going on with these raids by masked law enforcement. After Homans made a big thing about it, claims total, over 500 people have been taken up, and some of them are collateral damage. The fact that, who knows whether that's true or not? It's a made-up number, how many people are collateral, and to Maura Healey's point, are they criminals? I mean, for the woman that they took off the streets, she was a co-author of an op-ed. You can disagree with her political opinions, but that shouldn't rush you off to a jail somewhere and then defy a court order, not the first time, not to have someone removed from the state. This is a very troubling lawless pattern that everybody should be investigating.
Lizzie?
Well, we don't know if there's more to it, if there is going to be more information that comes out. However, I will say the governor deserves credit for reaching out to Homan and for her willingness to be collaborative with federal authorities. I think everybody can agree at the end of the day, politics aside, taking dangerous people off our streets and out of our communities is a good thing, and good for her for doing that outreach.
But I would just add, she made a point of how safe Massachusetts is, very similar to what Michelle Wu said about Boston.
But we can't deny that there have been several people that have been taken off the streets since January that have been convicted criminals with gang ties that shouldn't have been here. But and no one is mad that they're gone from Massachusetts.
All I'm saying is, show your work. Where's the proof?
Absolutely, but we also can't dismiss the fact that there could be more information that we don't know that could qualify why some of these arrests are taking place.
Don't allow that to defy our democratic principles.
All right, a tough budget season is upon us, and Speaker Ron Mariano has made it clear he is not on board with some of Governor Healey's tax proposals, including a candy tax. Now, do you think things could get tense between the legislature and the corner office, Lizzie?
Massachusetts has one of the highest costs of living. We're more expensive than California. Housing is unaffordable. Our groceries are 20% higher than other parts of the state. Utilities are through the roof. There's not an appetite for more taxes. We need to be looking at actually more cuts and getting our fiscal house in order. And even among Democrats, they're not interested in more taxes. We just passed the millionaire's tax. Like, enough is enough.
Right. Prescription drug taxes, candy tax. Why do we need to raise taxes in Massachusetts?
Well, I mean, there's always a give and take on the budget, right? No matter what year it is and who's in office. I think what is the added to the challenge this year is all the federal funding that Trump is taking away. I mean, the fact is, he's taking away money that Congress already authorized, appropriated, already in programs here in Massachusetts for school lunches and food and farmers, and go down the list.
Are we going to see Beacon Hill have to doge things?
No, well, two things. One, that's illegal. Trump can't do that. That's Congress's job. They've already appropriated the money, number one, and Doge is illegal too. So everything they're doing is illegal, and there needs to be a more of a cry and an effort by Congress, and including our delegation, to go after those people and get that money back.
Next item. Shall we have a group chat, shall we? The Atlantic magazine editor.
Not on Signal.
Okay, not on Signal, right? The editor who was mistakenly included in a Signal messaging group discussing a military attack inside Yemen posted the text. That's after the White House downplayed the security breach, saying no classified information was revealed. The president brushing off calls for resignations. Is the fact that this happened so early in the administration limiting the damage, Marianne? Should it, if it is?
The damage is devastating, and everyone who participated on that call, and the Signal call, broke the law. Everybody who testified before the Senate and House last week under oath lied about it, and they broke the law doing that. They have jeopardized our national security and the way everything has always been done, and they're trying to blow it off. And there are people who aren't getting the attention, like Marco Rubio, who was chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He knew absolutely the fact that he should not have been on that call that way. So there's much more to this story. It's not the only one in terms of all the other revelations.
Lizzie, what's your read?
This is a mistake. This is embarrassing. I think it warrants more information coming out to the public about what happened here. But let's take a step back and think about how we got here. Foreign policy under the Biden administration was a disaster. This group, the Houthis, are Iranian-backed. They've been targeting our military. They have been a threat. They were designated as a federal terrorist organization in January. And almost everybody agrees that it's a good thing that we're pushing back on them to make this world a safer place. And that was what we should be focused on.
Massive Trump tariffs take effect this week. The economy, consumer confidence, pretty well shaken. Trump admits a recession could happen. Do you think you'll see this through, Lizzie?
Well, in the exit polls, we saw the economy was a huge irritant for 70% of Americans. 50% of people said that they were worse off now than they were 4 years ago. Trump ran on tariffs, so now he's actually doing what he said. I think the question is, when we look back, is he going to have success on this issue? Is it actually going to do something to move the ball down the field and make the economy better? Are Americans going to be happier about that? And I don't think that we're in a position to judge that yet until we see if it actually works.
Marianne?
If you're going to dismantle the United States of America, this is what you would do. A reminder to everybody at home, Hitler dismantled Germany's democracy in 6 months. Donald Trump's been in office for just over 2 months, number one. Number two, Donald Trump can't do tariffs. It is Congress. In the Constitution, only Congress can do tariffs, and a president can only do it with their permission. Again, once again, Donald Trump taking power he does not have under the Constitution, and Congress is not stopping him.
We continue on the record. Stay with us.